A few weeks ago, on a typical Thursday morning, I found myself in the middle of our busy routine preparing our two children to school at 7:30. The morning chaos was seen, suddenly interrupted by the loud ringing of the phone. I became curious, wondering who could be called at such an early hour. I looked at the screen and saw a code, unknown, which further sparked my interest. "Hello," I replied cautiously, bringing the phone to my ear. To my surprise, it was my wife on the other end of the line. I was surprised that she was calling when we had spoken the night before. "Claire works at a small agency. Marketing, and your call caught my attention immediately. I take care of our children and I work from home while she is always on the move working at a printing company in Isim, the city center. Despite our different schedules, we organize ourselves well and lead a fairly comfortable life. We live in a cozy 4-bedroom suburban home with a pool, and we are lucky enough to have a great group of friends." But this time Claire sounded worried. She said that the night before, when she went down to the hotel lobby to get a newspaper, someone stole her purse. "Please cancel our credit cards immediately and ask for new ones. I have already informed Joy, my boss, urgently, and she will be in charge of sending me new company cards by express courier so that I have them before I leave. Tomorrow he will also transfer me some money so I can get by." Meanwhile, Claire said in a restless, "But if you are always very careful with your things, how did this happen?" I asked, feeling that something didn't fit. Unfortunately, I was a little distracted, and I left my bag on the checkout counter while I grabbed more newspapers. When I came back, the cashier was gone. She said she was busy with another client and didn't see anything strange about my driver's license. Driver was also in the bag, but the hotel sent staff to check nearby bins. I hope they have found, otherwise I will have to depend on a taxi for today's meeting. "Don't worry, I will take care of it. Credit cards immediately. Sorry, love. It was an oversight on my part. I hope that apart from the 00 I had in my wallet, we don't have any more drawbacks. The other cards, we can replace them little by little by. Luckily, most of my makeup is still in the room, so I'll be ready for the presentation in the morning." How are the children? I miss those moments when we were all together. Let me tell you what happened. About 6 weeks ago, I fortunately managed to cancel the credit cards before someone made improper charges. However, the wallet with my driver's license and other documents were still missing, so I decided to leave. That matter aside, life went on its course. But today I came across something important reviewing the papers at home. I came across a statement of account from investment fund that Claire manages separately, which comes from the inheritance he received after the tragic accident of his parents a few years ago. I have always respected his privacy with that account, but when I searched for our home insurance policy, I found one mask with the monthly statements of his personal account. I remembered that the inheritance amounted to about $50,000 when his parents passed away and he gave me. I was curious to know how much it had grown over time. To my surprise, the amount had increased to over $400,000. While reviewing the statement, I noticed there was a withdrawal of $3,000 from your money market account about 6 weeks ago. My curiosity increased to wondering what I had spent that money on, so I decided to do a little research. More to my amazement, I discovered that he had issued a considerable check to a local jewelry store just a couple of days after losing her purse in that same city. I couldn't help but wonder what she had bought at that jewelry store. She hadn't mentioned buying anything for me, and I hadn't heard her speak either. To buy jewelry for someone else. Although he has a brother, he didn't understand that he would need a gift of $3,000. After thinking about it for a while, I decided to go to the computer and visit the jewelry store's website. I wrote down their phone number to make a purchase. Some questions. I picked up the phone and dialed the store number. A woman. He responded by introducing himself as a representative of the business and asked me how he could help me. I gave him my name and I explained to him the transaction I wanted to inquire about. I mentioned to him that we had had a problem with the purchase and wanted to know if there was any kind of guarantee. She looked up the transaction on her computer, and then he asked, what was the problem with the rings? I was silent for a moment, trying to understand what it was. Rings I was talking about. Fortunately, the woman on the line clarified for me quickly. "Oh yes, I remember this purchase when it came to our store. It was visibly distressed and told us that her rings had been stolen. Commitment wanted to replace them, which was a rather complicated task. While searching for options that would fit your needs, we used the company credit card as collateral and later sent us a check to cover the cost. Now that you mention a problem with the rings, I want to assure you that our store offers a 90-day warranty for this type of situations. It is possible that the setting of the diamond had come loose. I was completely baffled. She had talked about the theft of her purse, but never mentioned that she had also lost her wedding and engagement rings. It took me a moment to process that new information I told the woman for phone. I need to talk to my wife before making any decision. I will contact you later with that. I said goodbye. Although the woman sounded a little confused, my bewilderment was even greater. It was increasingly evident that the rings should have been inside her bag when it was stolen. But then why he was carrying them there in the first place? If he had no intention of hiding his marital status, made no sense for her to keep them in her purse as far as I could. I knew there was no professional reason that would prevent her from showing that she was married. However, a disturbing thought began to creep into my head. And if I wanted to pretend I wasn't married in certain situations social, the mere idea that he might have considered the possibility of an extramarital affair while he was far from home made my stomach turn. We had been married for 11 years and we had 2 wonderful children, Jeremy 8 and Melissa 6. Always I had believed that our marriage was solid, that we were a perfect family. Our life together seemed full to me. Or at least that's what I thought. Claire. He traveled once a month, staying 2 or 3 nights in distant cities. If he really had those intentions, maybe he saw those trips as an opportunity. Discreetly, it seemed that the loss of the rings had affected him so much that decided to replace them with some very similar to the originals I bought those rings with my modest salary. They weren't luxurious, so replicating them wouldn't have been that expensive. If I had really lost them, I could have reported it to the insurance company. But then I would have known if her bag was really stolen at the hotel, should having made a report of what exactly he had declared as lost. I decided to look for the hotel number and called and asked if they had any record of the theft of my wife's purse. To my surprise, they confirmed that yes, and they even had a written report of the incident. I asked for a copy and they faxed it to me. Shortly after, report was drafted and signed by the same clergy in his statement. She mentioned that her purse was stolen while she was dancing in the lounge and said she had left it on the seat where she was sitting, and when I came back it had disappeared. The most surprising thing was that Claire made it clear in the report that she did not want to involve the police. While I was processing all this information, my mind kept spinning, overwhelmed by the implications of what I had just discovered, that Claire had deceived me not only by hiding the truth from me about the stolen rings, but also inventing a story about the theft from her bag. Maybe she knew another explanation, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't think of anything else. That in the disturbing thoughts that revolved in my head each time, it became more evident that I needed to understand the true meaning of loss of those rings, or the uncertainty would end up driving me crazy. The only thing that it seemed clear that the rings were inside her bag when she was dancing with an unknown man. Several weeks had passed since that incident, and within a few days Claire had scheduled another trip. I realized I needed to get more details about his itinerary. I wanted to understand what did at night when she wasn't home, if she was really involved with other men, maybe lose the rings. It had served as a wake-up call, forcing her to reflect on his actions. Knew that if he were to confirm his infidelity, the most likely thing was that our marriage would end. However, what distressed me most was the impact this would have on our children. Claire was certainly a mother wonderful, but the idea of him having custody was strange to me, unbearable. Especially with his constant work trips. I was working at full speed looking for any clue that would help me clarify his loyalty to what other information could reveal what he did during his travels. Took precautions, or he left everything to chance. He assumed that if he were unfaithful, he would be careful. He wouldn't want to risk contracting an illness or an unwanted pregnancy. After all, I had undergone a vasectomy after the birth of our second child, so a pregnancy would be impossible. I couldn't trust the men I was with to take, so she probably had her own methods, contraceptives. Only one question remained. Where to keep them was little. You probably had them at home or in your car, so your office seemed like the most logical choice. He carried with him on his business trips and knew that he was carrying his documents, laptop, and work materials. Presentation in a large briefcase that he always kept in his office. But if he had an early morning flight, he would bring his briefcase home the night before and pack it in his suitcase for the airport. That detail was crucial. I needed to find an opportunity to check the briefcase before it was shipped. Departure. I just hoped that his next trip would include an early flight. I decided, stay calm, and act completely normal without giving any signs that something was bothering me. Just when the children, they arrived from school, I was busy with several tasks which left me little time to obsess over my suspicions. However, in the back of my mind, the shadow of the possible. Claire's infidelity did not disappear. When Claire returned from the work, found me in the middle of a small disaster while preparing the dinner. I accidentally spilled a bowl of beans on the floor between cleaning and handling the children. I ended up looking a little scruffy. Luckily, she didn't. She seemed to notice nothing unusual in my behavior after everything was in order. I greeted her with a kiss on her cheek. We sat down to dinner as usual, talking about the day and maintaining our usual routine. Had no reason to suspect that I was aware of anything, or that I worried about your next trip. So you have another trip in? I asked with a carefree tone. Yes, he answered without much enthusiasm. The same routine as always. No. It's something that excites me. My curiosity prompted me to investigate a little further. If you don't like it so much, have you thought about applying for another position? You have been in the company, and you know many aspects of its operation well. I think you could adapt to almost any position. She mentioned that she wanted to earn more experience before making the transition to a desk job. However, I took the opportunity to appeal to his emotional side regarding the kids. I really miss you when you're not home, I added, hoping. I know it will stir up some guilt in her. I'm sorry, she replied tenderly. I miss you all too. Looking for more details, I continued. And where are you going? Maybe you're leaving in the morning. Maybe we can spend some time together. Before you left, I looked at her intently, aware that the children could listening to us tried to seem normal, but my anxiety was evident. Stomach was so upset that he could hardly eat. He seemed to believe that everything was in order. Since his reaction was similar to mine, I wondered if he had any stomach upset, but in reality he was just eating without much enthusiasm. Perhaps my suspicions were unfounded, but the need to review his briefcase still persisted. Well, it could give me clues about his loyalty. I'm just going to Denton, so I'll leave tomorrow morning at 7:30. Mentioned I need something. I'll stay on my feet until I get back on Friday, he added playfully, winking at me. I responded in kind way, trying to maintain an appearance of normality. To my surprise, he blushed at his comment about bringing the briefcase home the night before. The trip meant I wouldn't stop by the office before going to the airport. Your sincere attitude towards our children and me could indicate that he had not committed any infidelity on his travels, or that he was very skilled at hiding. He hoped to discover the truth when he checked the contents of his briefcase the night before his Claire arrived home, in good spirits, and parked her car next to mine, the garage as usual, and seemed visibly excited. This made me wondering if his excitement was due to our conversation, or if there was another reason behind entering the house. He brought the briefcase with him, which made me assume it was still in the car. I was busy preparing dinner when, after we sat down at the table, he casually asked me if he could bring his suitcase from the garage when we finished eating. Of course, I answered, trying hard for not showing any suspicions. Are you ready for your trip? He asked, trying to calm down. Oh yes, it's a routine trip. My briefcase is in the car ready for the day. I just packed a bag with the essentials for the night. To continue with the daily conversation, I asked him, do you have any plans while you are out? Not the kids and I. We will follow our usual routine during the week. Maybe we can plan something. Fun family weekend, responded enthusiastically. Sounds good, I said with genuine interest. After dinner, helped me clear the table and load the dishwasher. Once we were done, wasted the room to prepare his things while I went to the garage to get his suitcase. When I inspected the car, I didn't find the briefcase on the seats, which led me to think that he had put it in the trunk. This didn't suit me. Surprised, as he had planned to access it later that night. At returning to the room with his suitcase, I asked him naturally, do you know where the keys are? Of the car, I think one of my tires is slowly losing air. If I take it to Jerry Station, can fix it right. Away for a brief moment, it seemed, confused, but then she took the keys out of her bag and handed them to me. She proposed an alternative. You couldn't just use the spare tire, for that's what it's for. In emergency cases, I firmly answered yes. The spare tire is for gums, but we have enough time to fix this properly. It is better to do it right without giving it a chance to, insisting on quickly getting out to the garage before he changed his mind. I drove his car towards the junction station, the workshop of my old friend Jerry, who I knew him since school. As soon as I arrived, I honked the horn to get his attention. Jerry saw me and opened the workshop door, allowing me to enter before Arla behind me. "What's up, friend?" asked curiously. "Am I supposed to they would fix the tire here? But I really needed a little time to check something else," Jerry replied. He frowned, picking up on my worried tone. "Problems at home?" he asked. Cautiously, perhaps I admitted without wanting to give too many details. I opened the trunk and I took out the Clier briefcase, placing it on a workbench and carefully opening it. "Jerry, not a client, Isab," and before he said, "Well, I have a client, take yourself time, friend," I nodded deeply. "Yes, compartum dilet with great care, ascertain its place." I passed Misos by Bisos and Teros, and suddenly something caught my attention. I took out a small package and opened. My heart sank. It was a box of contraceptives and 3 were missing. A chill ran down my spine. There was the proof I was most afraid of finding. I swallowed, felt a knot in my stomach, and very carefully went back to. I placed the package exactly where I found it. I closed the briefcase and put it in. "New in the trunk and it let's make sure." "As if I did," I said with a tone of disappointment that I couldn't hide. Jerry looked at me with empathy. "If you want, stay a while, I can check the tire pressure while you pretend you fixed the problem." I nodded. With gratitude, Jerry did not need any further explanations. He had always been a true friend while he was working on the tires. I left the shop and I drove to a gas station and filled up the car's tank without knowing when I would do it again for her. My mind was filled with uncertainty and a dark feeling of sadness and anger. It took hold of me. I filled the fuel tank without knowing when I would get back to it for her. My mind was full of thoughts, some of gratitude to Jerry for his support, and others consumed by the darkness of the betrayal. While driving back home, the anger and the FR grew inside me like a fire impossible to put out. How could it do it to me? How could this betray not only our marriage but also our children? I took a deep breath and forced myself to think clearly. More than my pain, the most important thing now was to protect the children. If he wanted to get custody, needed concrete evidence of his infidelity. Even if it hurt me, admit it. I couldn't deny that despite everything, Claire was a good mother. Children needed a mother figure in their lives, and although she had the right to see them, my goal was to get the full custody. And then there was the other problem. How would she explain this to her brother, to his friends when I got home? I tried to act normal from the room. I told him everything was ready. It was just a nail in the tire. Nothing serious. "Okay, thanks," he replied with a distant tone, avoiding looking at me. He needed so I went to the kitchen for a beer and settled in the living room with the kids, who were engrossed in watching their favorite show. Half an hour later, Claire came in and sat next to me on the sofa. By then my anger had calmed down, but a deep sadness invaded our family. That happiness that we once had was about to disappear, become just a memory. To my surprise, Claire came closer, and he snuggled up next to me and whispered sweetly in my ear, "Are you ready for tonight?" I took a sip of my beer before answering, "I think so. But I have some." Claire pouted and said tenderly, "Oh, that's so bad, darling." Then he hugged me gently and whispered, "I love you," instinctively. I put my arm through her shoulders. Despite everything, despite his betrayal, there was still a trace of affection in his voice and his way of touching me. Why he did it? He was looking for emotion, something that I couldn't give it to him. Maybe he would never fully understand it. But what I did, I knew for sure that the trust between us was shattered. That at night we put the children to bed together and kissed them before sleeping for them. The fact that their mother traveled frequently was already normal, so they didn't seem restless, but I knew that in the morning she would leave, and with each goodbye we had, the relationship became more fragile. That night we made love, but something had changed. I didn't feel the same passion, the same connection. Claire noticed it and worriedly asked, "Does it still hurt?" "Stomach love." I nodded and answered in a muffled voice, "Yes, but I support deep down. I just wanted her to see what was at stake. That understood that our relationship was worth more than that trip." And then, without being able to avoid it, I asked him, Do you really have to go on this trip deep down? I wished with all my might that this was all just a nightmare, something I could wake up from and find out that everything was still fine. Nothing had changed. Claire sighed, and with a voice full of "Excuse me," he said, "Sorry, honey, but this trip is important. I will do everything possible to finish soon and return with you. I'm looking forward to the weekend to be together." My chest, it felt heavy. I swallowed my sadness and whispered back, "It's okay, love. We better go to sleep. You have to get up early. For your flight, I'll take a quick shower now so as not to worry about that in the morning, okay?" She replied before heading to the bathroom. I stayed in the room, but a restlessness prompted me to approach her suitcase, perhaps looking for some sign, some more proof of what he already feared. When I opened it, I saw on top some formal and discreet business clothes, but at the same time looked more closely. My heart stopped for a moment. There was his. The most seductive lingerie, perfectly folded, and next to it your little one black dress that made her look irresistible. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to control the anger and the pain. Then with great care I placed everything back exactly as it was, and I closed the suitcase. I got into bed. But sleep didn't come when Claire started moving at 5 a.m. I stayed motionless. I didn't get up to say goodbye like we used to. I just couldn't. Before leaving, he leaned towards me and kissed me softly on the cheek. "Feeling bad, love?" he asked in a low voice. I nodded. Without saying a word, I heard the garage door close, and I knew he was gone. I finally got out of bed and got in the shower. I knew he was gone. A difficult day awaited me after taking the children to school and having breakfast. I took the phone book and looked for private detective services. I needed an agency with national coverage, especially in the city Claire was traveling to. I called several agencies until I found one with a branch at my destination. Meeting for that same morning needed answers. The next step was to search a divorce lawyer. A friend had recommended one in particular to me, so I called and made an appointment for the afternoon. I knew this would be a difficult process, but there was no turning back. When I arrived at the private detective's office, I explained my situation, and we arranged surveillance for the night Claire would be out. I gave her a photo of her and details of her travel itinerary to facilitate your identification, assured me that they would do everything possible to obtain photographic evidence and prepare a report on their activities at the end of their day to ensure communication fluid. We agreed that they would send me updates by email to his office in Denton. The final report would be ready by Monday afternoon. Tomorrow I made a payment. I considered speaking in advance, and before leaving the detective, he warned me, "We can try to get photos, but we can't promise anything. We will do everything possible to obtain the most incriminating evidence." I nodded. There was no turning back. I accepted. That would be enough. In the afternoon, I had my meeting with the lawyer and everything. It came out as expected, he explained to me, that in our state divorce is governed by the principle of no fault, which means that it was not necessary to point anyone out as responsible without. However, since I was the primary caregiver for our children, it was very likely that I would be awarded custody. Even so, CLA would have broad visitation rights, something that could not be avoided. And as for our assets, everything would be divided equally, 50% for each one. There would be no need to pay alimony because our income was similar, but since I would stay with the children, Claire, I would have to pay support regarding his inheritance. Irrelevant. I never cared about that money, and it was only fair that she kept it. The only priority was the well-being of our children. I asked the lawyer to prepare the documents so that CLA would receive them on Monday, citing differences irreconcilable. I also requested that he agree to leave the house immediately. After the divorce, the lawyer confirmed that as legal guardian of the children, he had the right to make that request. Once the children turned 18, you would sell the house, and you would split the money in half. I left the lawyer's office with a sense of relief. I realized that life would go on for me and the children instead. I would have to face the consequences of his betrayal. I haven't made any decisions yet, or finances, insurance, or other legal matters. I thought I would have time enough to take care of that after serving her the divorce papers, plus with her inheritance. Claire wouldn't have financial problems. I was not worried about his share of the joint savings when it was time for school to leave. I went home to wait for the bus with the kids on Friday afternoon. He came back with a smile, and I offered to do his laundry, but as expected, He politely declined my help and said he would do it later. I couldn't help but blurt out a mischievous, Smile knew perfectly well why she wanted to do her own laundry. It was his way of making sure that his double life remained hidden later on. While we were lying down, Cla expressed concern about my stomach problem and he suggested that I go to the doctor. This has gone on too long, he insisted. With a playful smile, I replied that a friend had recommended a new one to me, medicine, and that he was planning to try it. Let's make sure I really missed the Monday after B when the kids went to school and Celia was leaving for work. I received a call from the detective agency. We have the report ready, they told me. I replied that I would be right there, and 30 minutes later I was sitting in front of the manager. From the office, they sent us the report with photos from Denton this morning. Reported had not yet read the report in its entirety, but after a quick review and a glance at the photos told me that it looked pretty incriminating. I took a copy and started, upon reading the report. The suspect was identified as a clergy member. Barton, according to records, the surveillance began on Wednesday, June 16th, at 5:17 p.m. in the lobby of the Denton Marriott Hotel. His identity was confirmed by comparing his photo with the one provided by Merville in addition. The report detailed his movements, and he wore his ID badge, company, and a briefcase which further confirmed his identity at 5:23 p.m. A member of the staff accompanied her to room 14. The report stressed that in that moment, I was alone. Also included a photo labeled as an example, one where Cla was seen in office attire before entering the room and the image still wearing her wedding ring. The agents had rented a room right across from hers. Ascot and 6:31 p.m. movement was detected in Claire. He left his room and headed to the elevator a minute later at 6:32 p.m., exited the elevator and entered the hotel lobby. The report indicated that at that moment, her outfit had changed upon seeing the image labeled as example. A BMI heart sank. Elja was wearing a little black cocktail dress accompanied by high heels and the necklace I gave her on our 10th anniversary. But what struck me most was what he was no longer wearing: wedding ring. There was no doubt in the photo his left hand was bare. The report continued with another even more devastating image. The photo labeled as example 1D showed Celia sitting in a restaurant booth kissing passionately to another man. The intensity of their connection was undeniable in the photo at 8:51 p.m. The report indicated that Clay and the man left the restaurant. Together they went to the elevator and went up to the other floor. Image labeled as example 1E captured the exact moment when they entered room 414 in the photo. She looked a little drunk, but clearly happy with the course of the night. At 11:13 p.m., the man left the room and left the building. The report also included the number of the license plate of the vehicle in which he left was registered in Alexander's name. B. Tate, resident at 1424 Elia Drive, Denton. While investigating, I discovered something even more shocking. Alexander B. Tate was married and had 2 small children, but the worst was yet to come. As he continued reading the report, my stomach sank that La hadn't just been with that man that night. Next, he repeated the same thing with another person. The document was signed by a private investigator from Denton. I closed, eyes full of rage and frustration. How could he do this to me? How could he do this to her, to our family? The level of deception and betrayal exceeded my worst expectations. Not even the fact that, having lost her wedding rings, had made her stop after paying the detective and to thank him for his work. I took 2 extra copies of the report in a CD. Point could not be at risk of per as evidence. As soon as I arrived, I immediately called my divorce lawyer at home. Are the papers ready? I asked. Firm voice. We can. At what moment? He replied. Then Hgon ordered, without hesitation, and then add some. I want the documents delivered to your office tomorrow in public. The lawyer paused, surprised. We can do it, but you are. I'm sure he completely wanted Cla to feel the shame of his actions. Wanted him to understand that his decisions had real consequences that night. There was love between us. Cla seemed restless, as if she felt that something she was feeling bad. She didn't say anything directly, but she seemed worried about me too. I noticed she was more distant, as if something was bothering her. But I didn't say anything in the morning. Next, I woke up early after a sleepless night. I worked on the computer until I heard the children get up. Then I went to the kitchen and prepared breakfast for them. When I got home, he said goodbye to go to work. Gave me a hug and tried to kiss me. I responded with a cold and distant hug he gave me jokingly, and I told him to hurry up. That moment when I noticed something in his gaze, perhaps deep down I already suspected. What was about to happen when I closed the door behind her, I saw. Tears in her eyes. In a whisper she said, "I love you," after he left. Deep sadness invaded me. For a moment I felt like crying, but I held back. The children needed me, attention, and had to prepare them for the school bus at 10:45 a.m. The phone rang and the name of the office appeared on the screen. CLA. I answered without saying anything. There was an awkward silence on the other side of the. Then in a shaky whisper she said, "Sorry." I didn't answer. A second later, the call ended that night. See. He didn't come home. I wondered if he was still playing his game of lies despite my anger. I questioned myself. Too hard on her. The kids noticed her absence and asked for their mom to cheer them up. I took them to dinner at McDonald's after eating. Were so tired that they went straight to bed the next morning. He called again. "Honey, can I go home to pick up my things? We can talk for a moment." I felt guilty, but it disappeared quick. "Come between the night and noon," I answered calmly. "So the children and I, wouldn't we? Will be." I paused and then added, "If you want to talk, I will do it alone in the lawyer's office after you have signed and returned the documents." Divorce on the other end of the line. Klaus sobbing. After a brief silence he whispered in agreement and hung up, signed the papers, and months later, our marriage was officially over. But then I discovered something unexpected. Ella had become pregnant during her adventure and tried to hide it from her last lover, but her contraceptive method failed. Sooner or later, truth would have come to light. I heard rumors that it had started to come out with someone else, even thought about warning her future husband about her infidelity. Didn't want someone else suffered the same as me. We met at the lawyer's office and Clay begged that reconsider the divorce. She said it was very difficult for her not to have unlimited access to the children. I explained to her that I could trust her anymore. Then she told me that she had gone to therapy and that a psychologist had diagnosed her with nymphomania and said that she now had her impulses under control, but that was not enough for me if I really needed help. He had contracted a sexually transmitted disease. However, he continued with his unbridled life. I felt some compassion, but I answered him firmly. That was her choice. I can't do anything for her. Meanwhile, my life went on. I went on to start dating someone else. She was a strong and brave woman, someone who had also been betrayed and did not tolerate disloyalty. My children got along well with her, and in my heart, I felt that it was the beginning of something real. Maybe with time it could give me a new chance at love.